a lot of black space. We should like do something with that later.
What?
it was like black for a while. Then it shows the stinger. Then it's black for a while. It's funny.
Oh,
I just noticed that. It's probably been like that every time. I just noticed it now.
yeah. Anyway, we have Joel Rodriguez here, and he's our guest. And he doesn't have a Kickstarter, so everybody can still keep watching and listening because we're not going to be talking about Kickstarter project. We're going to be talking
about comics.
Yeah, comics and charity and stuff like that. So
yeah, fun stuff. How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And beef jerky. Yeah. Yes. Thanks for coming.
Spicy teriyaki jerky. Delicious.
No, this was Hawaiian teriyaki jerky.
Oh, Hawaiian.
That's also delicious.
Although my number one favorite is the sweet and spicy. That's my favorite one.
Yeah. I love jerky. So yeah, how's it going, guys?
Good. You?
It's doing good. We're doing damn good.
Yes. Well, I apologize ahead of time if I cough at all uncontrollably during this podcast. I was telling Greg off screen that I've got a whole sickness running through my household. I've been fighting it for about a week. I'm personally feeling pretty good, so I sequestered myself off in my office for the next hour. So hopefully we're good, but apologies ahead of time.
No worries. I think you probably got whatever the hell went around the whole world because my brother and I, who like never get sick, both got sick. And even though I got better, I was still coughing for like a week later. I was like it's basically all gone now, but it was one of those things I was like, damn, like this stuff's just like lingering.
Yeah, I blame my son because I've got a 4-year-old, and before he came around, I like never got sick. It was once every year or two I'd get sick for a couple days, and then it'd be over. Over the past 6 months, I've gotten sick like every couple of weeks to a month, and I'm like, having this kid in daycare is the worst.
Well, you got to get more vitamin D. I can guess from the complexion that you're not getting too much vitamin D.
I mean, what can I say? I do a lot of my running at night as opposed to during the day, so
I wait till the sun goes down so I don't burn alive.
Pretty much. I live in Florida, so that's very much.
Jesus, yeah. It's the perfect place to be indoors.
Exactly.
Are you awesome. Is all of Florida like got snow, or is it just parts of Florida? Like,
it's mostly the Panhandle, which, if you think about Florida, it shoots down and then goes into the peninsula. So it's the part that's actually continental. That's the part that's getting hit with the snow. For us, we're dealing with 40 to 30 degree weather, but no snow.
I wish I had that instead of.
It's funny. I want to say it was either earlier this week or last week. Somebody I know in Chicago was like, "Wow, it's -6 here. Let's see how cold it is in like the Antarctics." Oh, -11. That's it. I was like, "Holy crap!" Yeah, they got that Arctic wind coming down hard.
I'm originally from Michigan, but it's been so long since I've been up there in winter that I'm a wimp when it comes to the cold. Like, it's 40 and I don't want to go outside. It's too cold. No. And then, of course, everyone's dealing with the negatives. And I remember those days, and I'm never going back.
Yeah, I would like to not have to deal with it anymore. But I'm in New York, so.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're about as bad as Michigan, except that when it can get even colder because Michigan at least has that lake to kind of like soften most of the cold blows that come that way. New York just gets smacked in the face.
Yeah, that lake effect snow is no joke though. Like the snow and the ice is the main reason why I left Michigan. There's a story that I like to tell where my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we were living together at her parents' house at the time, and she was leaving for work one day, and where we lived, you had to go up a hill and up another hill to get to our garage. She went down the first hill and fishtailed and ended up sideways in the middle of the road because of the ice that was buried under the snow. At that point, it took me and her dad about 20 minutes or so to get her out of the middle of the road. And I decided, nope, we're done. As soon as we get a chance, we're leaving. He ended up moving down to Florida, and we said, we're coming too. So very quickly we got down here and haven't looked back.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm in Tennessee, so like the weather here is normally pretty, lukewarm to warm, and yeah, every once in a while we get hit with cold. If we get like, I remember the first time I ever saw it when I was visiting my brother here before I moved here. I'm about to leave to go back to New York, and the whole news broadcast is like, there's this much snow coming, and it's like less than 1 inch. It's like there's this much snow coming. Make sure you get to the store, get some food, get some supplies. Because like they have no snowplows here. So I think it was it was last year, winter 2023 to 2024. They had a I can't remember how much it was, but it's something like a foot of snow or 2 feet of snow here, which is unheard of. It was like the biggest storm in 10 years. And the what's it called? The road that I'm on is like an off road. Like nobody needs to drive on my road, and so the plows never came down it. We had 2.5 inches of ice for like 2 weeks. So I could not leave my house. I could. Luckily, I lived 2 minutes walking distance to a Kroger, but like I could not leave the house in a vehicle. I tried. So,
man,
yeah, it was crazy. Like you had to have, because I have a sedan, so like you need like something heavy with chains to drive on something like that. I was like, damn.
Yeah. Oh, your story wins. Oh, dude, that's brutal.
Yeah, that's why it's funny, because it's like when what was it? Texas had that ice over. That was the same time frame when they had that ice over where their windmills all froze and power was cutting off and stuff. And they're like, "What do we do?" And it's like, I don't know. What did you do before? Like, you didn't always have that. Like
that's one of the craziest things that I learned when I moved down to Florida is how they handle the different natural phenomena. For example, up in Michigan, when you had snow and ice, you'd get hit overnight. You'd wake up, you'd have a couple feet worth of snow with ice underneath it, and you'd get up, you'd shovel, you'd drive behind the plows, doing the best that you can to get to work safe. You get to work, you do your time, and you go back.
Yeah, but by the time you left work, the entire roads are cleared too.
Yeah. And then you come down here, and there might be a hurricane in a week. We're going to shut down the state. It's like, well, shit, that's nice.
Yeah, that's even the same with what's it called? They have like in New York, we use salt everywhere, but I think it's Vermont. Like Vermont uses like sand, so like they don't even melt their snow; they just add dirt to it, and they're like, yeah, that'll give us some traction. It's pretty fun how much they like how much the states differ when it comes to handling that stuff. Because it's funny too, because I don't remember what comedian it was, but he joked about the fact that like when New Orleans got hit with that huge hurricane years ago, it's like what did you expect? You built the city below sea level. Like it had like it's like what do you? I don't know what you're expecting when you do something crazy like that. It's super fun. I think Greg must have had a ice storm take out his internet over there. But in the meantime, one of the things that we were talking about, there he is, was talking about the new things that are coming out. So like we want to talk about what's new in the comic book space. And one of the big things that I was talking to Greg about just a couple of days ago was how Diamond Distribution again declared bankruptcy, and again I think they closed another distribution plant. They're going to be doing another restructuring, and it's interesting because our biggest interest this year. Or one of our biggest interests this year is getting our comics into comic shops. One of the biggest hurdles that we heard was that most local comic shops won't take an independent comic that doesn't have at least 3 issues in the same series. So we ended up going the wrong direction before we figured that out, and we just kept starting new series. And then we're like, oh, now we'll do issue 2 of each of those series, and now we're finally on issue 3 of each of these series. So we finished Ink 3 last year. We have Mittens 3 in the works. We have the Seer Chronicles 3 in the works, and then Chronicles of Horror 3 in the works. So we have this upcoming year, we're about to have a bunch of 3-issue series, and so now we're finally going to reach out. And the reason why it's so hard to get into comic shops outside of that 3-issue series is that a huge chunk of the comic shops will only take your comic if they're distributed by Diamond. So and Diamond never takes a truly independent comic book. You always need to be connected to somebody. So that's kind of like the question that we have. It's like, it's been a main player in the comic book distribution for years. And what do you think? What do you think about that type of company and how it impacts independent comic books? And what do you think it's going to mean that they're, facing these troubles again?
So I've never been a huge fan of Diamond just because of the monopoly they've held on the industry. When you have one distribution platform like that, on the business side of things, it leads to some just horrible deals. It makes the business side of things very difficult for people trying to get into the industry. One of the main reasons why they don't take independent publishers and just small creators is because we can't afford it. Like the number of copies that you have to purchase to be able to distribute through Diamond makes it an insurmountable cost for someone trying to put out their first 5-issue mini. So getting competitors like Lunar to put a little bit more pressure on Diamond, it makes it, it lowers the barrier to entry. And the more competition in the market, obviously the lower the barriers to entry. Problem with that is you're going to run into a situation on the retailer side where with the retailers, I can very clearly see they prefer Diamond for one main reason, the same reason why we all prefer Netflix over cable is when you have cable, you have to pay for all these different channels and all these different platforms to be able to watch everything that you want, or you can go to Netflix and get everything all in one spot. Well, what happened over time is now you have the streaming wars where there are 50 billion different streaming platforms. And in order to watch one thing, you have to get a different subscription and a different subscription. And you basically recreate cable without cable. So we're basically going to run into the same situation, which is what makes retailers hesitant, is instead of just having this one source, Diamond, it's going to end up becoming a bunch of different independent distributors trying to vie for that one spot. So I can definitely see the value that a large distribution platform like Diamond can give to the industry in terms of distribution with one interface that retailers have to work through. But I also see the huge harm in the industry overall that a monopoly like that can provide. So I'm seeing Vault make steps to do direct to retailer. I'm seeing ICV2 is actually doing their own distribution platform to try and help independent publishers and independent creators get their books out into shops. So a bunch of different companies are already stepping up to try and fill the void, lower the barrier to entry, and try and help out where Diamond is kind of taking the hit there. I think that it can really go either way. It just depends on whether the new distribution models, retailers, and the independent creators and publishers are willing to sit down, talk, and actually figure out what models will work best for everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that that I've thought about with things like Diamond is that, for example, I like Amazon, and Amazon crushes online sales because for me, it's everything I want in one place. The difference is that Amazon can reject various incoming products. They're just a lot more lenient with it, unlike Diamond. So I think when Diamond first comes out, it's actually a great filter. And like you said, it's easy for a comic book shop to go, hey, I'll let you decide if it's good. So I'm not wasting my time filling my stores with stuff that won't sell, right? Like that makes perfect sense from the local comic book shop's standpoint. But what happens is it's kind of like laws in government. Like some small company grows and becomes a big company. And they're like, yeah, but one of the things we did was kind of wrong. So I'm going to lobby and get a rule that says that you can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and now that you can't do that anymore, nobody small can get that big anymore. And that's kind of what that's where real monopolies become a problem, where it's like, well, if Amazon was working and I, as a small business owner, couldn't even open like a Shopify account or something like that, now we've got a problem. And that's kind of what comic book shops inadvertently did, was by them only accepting Diamond, they've kind of been the main restrictor, not just Diamond. And Diamond, by not allowing independents to get in there without meeting ridiculous, the rules that they have that don't really prove that the comic will sell, right? Like, I think that's the other thing, is like they have these rules that it's not so much like, hey, like if you have 500 comics and those 500 comics will sell, isn't that enough? It's like, oh no, you need 10,000. It's like, whoa, that's like, seems like a lot. And so I think that that's the other hurdle, is that what they probably did was, oh, we're getting an influx of people coming in. How do we filter it? Well, we could just put a giant barrier on it. And now we got a huge filter, so we don't have to deal with all that. So interestingly enough, I'm working with a company now that there's this big major company, and they sell a product, and they can deliver the product and set it all up for you. But if you're a small business, it literally costs them money to do it. They only work with giant companies. So do you know what they do? They license this thing to smaller companies that then also do it. And I think that that's the bigger issues. It's the fact that Diamond put up this giant barrier to entry, and there's no way to get an alternative at the moment, because local comic shops have only said yes to these guys, and these guys have created no internal flow to get to them. So I think that something that'll be interesting, especially if Diamond eventually falls and someone has to replace it. And I'll be honest, I talked to Greg about this. I would love to eventually become a distributor for independent comics and fill that gap. I think that if we get a system where there's the major Diamond, and then there's basically sub distributors that maybe have acceptance to certain regions that you can basically test market through, and these have much less restricted barriers to entry, and then as long as you make it from here, the big guys will take it. And it's I feel like something like that has to get set up, but no one's willing to be one of those sub guys. They're all just trying to compete with Diamond. So I think that that's an interesting way to go around fixing that, because the monopoly part is actually not bad. Small businesses can sell stuff on Amazon, and now I have access to Amazon's giant market, kind of like Kickstarter. Greg and I have talked about that. It's do you want to keep running Kickstarter? It's well, it's not that Kickstarter takes a percentage of your money that's the issue. It's that you're getting their audience. You don't own their audience. It's their audience. So until you get someone's email, you're still reaching new people that you could not otherwise reach. And that's a good thing for independent creators. So it's hard to say you should just get rid of something like that or come up with a whole new system. But I do like the idea of having these sub distributors that are regional or genre specific or whatever it might be. I think that would be a really cool idea.
Well, there's also the logistical aspects of it, where margins in comics are razor thin, especially when it comes to independent comics, because we're not printing 10,000 copies of a comic. We're printing maybe 1,000 to 2,000 of a good run. And those numbers can obviously vary. I'm just picking them out of a hat. So when you're printing those low print runs, you obviously have a higher cost per unit, which lowers your margins. And when you are working with different distribution levels, the higher quantity that you can work with is going to lower the cost per book. And when you're dealing with something that has a 1 month shelf life, like a single issue comic, it makes the logistics really difficult to manage financially, as opposed to looking at something like a bookstore or a trade paperback or traditional hardcover books. There's a lot more to work with there. So there's a lot of financial aspect that goes into it that is well outside my area of expertise when it comes to the industry. But I think that's one of the things that has kind of led Diamond into the strong position that it had, without giving it the necessary financial strength that really led to this position. Because there has to be something not right in either their business model or the industry that can take something that has basically a monopoly on the market and still leads to Chapter 11 bankruptcy when they have one competitor introduced in Lunar, as well as independent crowdfunding and things like that, which isn't really a direct threat since you're not crowdfunding directly to comic book stores. But obviously, there has to be something flawed there if you can have that big of a hold on a market and still end.
I think one of the other big things too is that what's it called? Penguin is it Penguin the one that handles Marvel distribution, right? So like by having Diamond as a secondary to those types of distributions, and then I didn't realize I was looking that up. It looks like Lunar is the one that's helping DC. So if Lunar is helping DC and Penguin's handling Marvel, and Diamond's trying to get basically the scraps, from that, and then Image, Dark Horse, that kind of stuff. It kind of makes sense that it's a flawed system. And I would say that the other thing that Greg and I have looked into for a while is just like there's drop ship printing for a variety of shirts, hats, things like that. That's another avenue too that I think would be another way to boost the ability to test if a comic does have scale, right? Because that's the thing. It's not that independent comics can only sell 1,000. It's that that's all we can afford to print, and if we don't get it into the right hands, that's all that we'll ever print. So if you get enough people to buy it, enough people to want it, eventually you can order 10,000 because you're getting them to enough people. But I definitely think that something like having a drop ship printing company, which is that's the thing. We found only one company that prints comic books on demand, one at a time, right? And outside of that, we haven't found anybody else. Other people, I think the smallest batches are like 25, and it's like that's fine. But it's like, what if I only have 15 sales? Now I have to go extra in debt just to get the money from those initial sales. And it's like, I'd rather take a smaller profit margin, but a continual profit margin instead of going red, black over and over again, just trying to get back to even though I already went super red with the paying of the creation of the comic. So I definitely think that there's like a lot of potential in that space. It's just no one's willing to innovate. No one's willing to try at it. And like I said, we only found one dropship printing company that does comics. I've been on the search. I actually found one other dropship printing book distributor that might be able to do it. And that's like, you know what I mean? So if I can get connected with them, that would be a really cool option we could offer to the independent comic space. But I think that's also a huge hurdle. Is trying to get it to the point where you don't need to mass print. You're printing on demand when it's there, so that you're not going from negative for the payment of the comic itself, and then negative just to print it, and then you're working your way up. You can go negative once, and then kind of just flatline and slowly go back up.
Yeah, and speaking specifically on the independent, the new creator side of things, a lot of independent creators come into this thinking about it as a hobby, not necessarily I'm going to try and take this and turn it into a business. I know all of us, we've been lucky enough to be in the industry for quite a few years, but with most people, the thought of, especially most writers, the thought of coming into comics, okay, you got to write the story. Now you have to pay for the creative team. You got to pay for the lettering. You got to pay for the production. Now you have to pay to get X number of printed or X number of copies printed. Okay, I'll go to Kickstarter. Wait, I need to figure out how to run a Kickstarter. I need to do X, Y, and Z, and now I can finally get the comic. Now I'm X number of dollars in debt, and I sold 5 copies. Like, that can be extremely discouraging, especially in the beginning. So drop shipping would definitely be an interesting thing if we can get a viable option for it. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, so that's definitely a route that we've been looking into, and I hope to be able to take advantage of, and like I said, potentially be like a leader in that space. In fact, one of the things that we're also doing this year is we've been asked to publish somebody's comic that we're not involved in whatsoever in the creation of. So we're like, awesome. Now we have to finally figure that out because we've been talking about it for like 3 years. I would love to do this. And now it's like, okay, so, and ironically in this case, and Greg knows, when we first started back in 2017, I think I spent 6 months trying to find information on how to build a comic book publishing company, and it doesn't exist. There's no book out there that exists. And then back in 2020, Greg happened to back a Kickstarter without telling me about it. And it turns out that there was this entertainment lawyer who worked in the comic book space who actually wrote the book on how to do independent comic book publishing. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. And I found it at his house like a year and a half ago. So I finally grabbed it. I've been reading it. I started reading it at the end of last year, and I'm slowly getting through that to basically figure out, yeah, exactly. Like first you have to figure out how to make the comic, then you got to figure out how to print the comic, then you got to figure out how to sell the comic and distribute the comic. And it's like all of these things are hurdles where, first off, for those who have the capital and they just want to make something great, it would be awesome if more of those people could move faster, because first off, that gets money flowing in the independent space, right? You get somebody who has an idea and capital, that means artists and writers and illustrators and letterers and editors are all getting paid, giving them the funds to continue moving in the space. Where some people, they try to start and then they kind of plateau, they can't get any more clientele, and their clientele fade off, and all of a sudden, like they got to go they got to go work in a different space. So I definitely think that it'd be a very cool means to like make this system. So if you want to make an independent comic, it's like, hey, here you go, steps A through Z. And so that's one thing that we want to work on. But yeah, I definitely think the other part would just be giving the tools necessary to those who want to do it themselves to actually be able to do it themselves and not, kill themselves over doing it. It's just like, what is it, crawling over broken glass, trying to figure out everything. Yeah, some good stuff. Good stuff. What's the other questions we got on here? I know we kind of went a long time on that one, so that's pretty good. And actually, yeah, we kind of did discuss one of them, but one of the other things we were talking about is the local comic shops themselves and the hurdle with them. And I think that's why, and the reason why the drop shipping idea I really liked was, so Greg and I had an idea when we first had our platform, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Our goal was to first do digital, because then there's no cost to print, right? So you pay a bunch of money up front, now you got digital, we'll get subscribers. That didn't work. So we're like, all right, what if we just do it free so we get people to read the damn thing, so then maybe they want to buy it? That also kind of didn't work, but it worked a little bit. And so then eventually we're like, what if we just sell it? And then ironically, selling it is the way that we've done it best. And it's very weird. It's like when it's free, like they don't want it. And when it's paid and you get as much as you want, they still don't want it. But if you pay it one at a time, for whatever reason, that feeling of buying a comic just feels good to some people. And one of our ideas, potentially in the long term, though, would be to have this online platform where a bunch of independent comics are available. People can sort them in 1,000 different ways. Eventually, I would love it where you could look up art style, genre, types of writers, things like that, and then you could find the comic that matches you. Then once enough comics get read, we could go and look at the Google Analytics and whatever else and go, oh, that's interesting. This one comic was viewed over 20,000 times. Let's put that on the dropship printing form. And now the dropship printing, like if you want to buy a comic, it's not filled with 10,000 comics. It's only filled with the ones that people wanted to read free, digitally, right? Now you can buy the comic. And then what would happen is if enough people buy those one-off prints, we can now go to a comic book shop and say, hey, here's a comic that had over 50,000 views on our websites. We put it up for sale and it sold 102 weeks. We'd like to put it in your shop since we looked at the analytics and most of the purchasers are in your area. What would you say to that? That's kind of like the path that we eventually want to go. And I think that to me is the best thing a local comic shop would want to hear outside of, we're Diamond and you could trust us. We're better than you. We know it.
Yeah. I like the idea. The one concern that I have just out of the plan that you laid out is if you're saying, okay, our analytics show that we sold X number of copies and it's a bestseller in your area, well, that means all the people in their area already have it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that it depends. Like if you're in New York City and I see 1,000 people bought the comic, that's like 0.001%.
That's true. Depends on the market. So yeah, definitely there. I think it's definitely interesting going the analytics route. One thing that I would be interested in seeing is how you would handle the compensation side for the royalties.
Oh yeah, so I've actually thought about that too. This is part of why I wanted to go through that book, because it does discuss a lot of these things. I've already got a list of things I need to do, but even off the cuff, the original idea was, let's say I find out there's 10 parts to get a comic from just a thought in your head to in the hands of a buyer. There's 10 steps. I'm just making this number up, but let's say there's 10 steps. Then my whole point is, depending on how many of those steps I'm involved in, I'm getting 10%. So if I'm literally doing, and obviously, well, let's say there's 9 steps to make it easy, right? So the whole idea is that if we are involved in every single step other than the thought that appeared in your head, we'd get 90% of the royalties. But if we're only involved in half of the things that are involved in it, right, then we get half the royalties. And then if it's only a tenth, like we just help you get it on the shelves, well, we only get 10% of the royalties, right? So that would kind of be like an idea that essentially the more involved you are, the more royalties you get. The more involved we are, the more royalties we get. And you basically get to choose because you're the independent creator and it's your idea. And it's like, here's the 9 steps. You know, how many of these do you want to do? One of them requires a lot of capital. Maybe that one's worth 20%. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of the idea. Like, I have to play with it and come up with actual numbers for that. But, you know, we have rough ideas of the cost of comics ranging from, you know, passable to, you know, elite level drawings and how much that would cost. You know, so breaking that down and going, okay, like, you know, if you want this, this, and this, right? Because maybe we just help you find the artist, but you pay for them. Maybe that's worth 5% for you. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of the idea. We want to figure out what's the fairest thing so that we're not mad that we spent a bunch of time and get no money, and you're not pissed that you gave away all your rights. You know, like, so that's kind of the idea.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept. With Metal Ninja Studios, we're a full service production company. So we basically handle everything up to publication. We specialize in concept comic. So basically, like you're talking about, taking the idea and fleshing it all the way out, the steps, as you say, the steps to get it from the idea to the physical comic in their hand. That's everything that we do. We dipped our toe in the publishing side of things. We mainly just do crowdfunding, and we don't really have any ambitions to go outside of that. We're very much we're in our lane with make the comic and make really good comics, and we're good with sticking there. But it's definitely an interesting concept.
The cool thing too is, so in that book, it breaks it down into pre-production, production, and post-production actions in the comic book publishing phase. Basically, what it sounds like is you're involved in the end of pre-production and the production phase, and potentially the beginning of the post-production phase. Because in the pre-production phase, a lot of the stuff that a real publisher would be doing would be stuff like trademark and copyright research and things like that. Right? That's stuff that most independent comic book creators do not do at all, like at all. But you know, some of them, the best that they do is they're like, oh, I wonder if this name exists on the internet. And they Google it, like, no, I couldn't find anything. Like, that's it, right? Yeah, I busted on Greg because there's one time, we actually do a decent amount of research, but like one of the names he came up, I'm like, I'm almost positive that name is taken. And we were looking for a long time, and then eventually someone finally shared it with us. We're like, ah, damn it, I knew it. Like, there it was. So we ended up changing the name. I was like, I knew that.
Yeah, Travis told me. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely something where that's part of like the pre-production phase, which, like I said, most people don't really go into that. And then finally, there's the actual taking the idea, writing it out, editing it, and getting it to illustrators. And that's like the beginning of the production phase. And that's all the production phase of the creation of it, reviewing it, making sure it looks good, etc. And then after it's done, there's the post-production stuff, like the printing of it, the distribution of it, the marketing of it, all those things. And so, yeah, I want to eventually be able to do all of those. In the meantime, I'll have to talk more after this podcast. But in the meantime, I wouldn't mind partnering with people who handle those intermediary steps. Like if I had, here'd be a good example. Do you know what Legal Shield is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you pay monthly and you basically get, the equivalent of an attorney in your pocket for the basic stuff. If I had a equivalent Legal Shield that would handle stuff like copyright and trademark at scale, that would be a really useful tool that you can come to me as an independent publisher, because it would cost you thousands of dollars to do this. It costs us maybe a couple $100. You pay us, you get that stuff done for you. Now it's like, okay, what's the next step, right? So I want it so someone can basically a la carte all the way up, and I want the full package where we help you beginning to end. Hey, you want to draw monsters? Here's the 10 artists that we know with 5 different price ranges and the type of artwork they draw, specifically monsters, right? Like, eventually that's what Greg and I want. We want a list of like the best monster drawers, the best superhero drawers, the best clothing, the best environment, the best, animal, like whatever it is. I want a list of these things in a big database so that I can be like, oh, you want this dream done? Cool. I have the people you need. And the reason why that idea came out was actually, I think on our last podcast episode, we were talking about this, where it was Eddie we were chatting with, and it's like, you get one guy to draw your comic, and you're like, oh, that's really cool, but like, you're not like, hell yeah. And then what happened was he had somebody draw, I think, like a cover art, and he looked at it and he goes, oh shit. Yeah, like, damn it, this is the guy. And so he had to, he all of a sudden he realized he had to tell the other guy, sorry, but like, this is the guy. Like, that was what was in my head, and I want that. So I definitely think that there's so many key components that can be done that if I can get like you said, you're basically the production part of that. It's like, okay, we get somebody, we check them out, and we're like, perfect. You need that produced, or you got our artist yourself? Cool. Do you want to have the art? Do you want to have it all handled by a boutique artist company, or do you want to pick and choose your artists? Cool. Boutique, here you go. Like, and that's kind of the idea. I'd love to be able to do that for artists.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people with cool ideas.
The stuff that you're mentioning on the production side is pretty much everything that we do. We handle writing, editing, lettering, production design, print prep, all of that in-house. We've got a team of project managers and everyone that I just mentioned. The one thing that we do outsource, we have a roster of artists that we're constantly expanding and constantly pre-vetting artists and building the database that you're talking about. We're already working on that. And we exclusively outsource artists because we're letterers, for example. Greg knows I got my start as a writer and a letterer. And with letterers, we can actually change our style to match the artwork that we're working with. Artists spend their entire careers developing their unique art style. So one of our founding values is service over sales. So if we're truly serving our clients, then we're not going to be selling our artists. We need to find the artist that serves that piece. So because of that, we don't have any in-house artists. Whenever we're dealing with a client who needs art, we present artists that we've pre-vetted, just like you're talking about with the database. We go through, we pre-vet, we find what fits that particular project. We present that artist, and then we manage everything. The amount of hands-on approach that our clients want are completely up to them. But that's, in essence, what we do as a production studio. We make it to where people can come to us with just an idea and leave with a printed comic. And our publisher, David Byrne, actually has his own printer, his own printing press.
I want a printer so bad, because that's my biggest thing is like, and don't get me wrong, I understand how complex printing companies, like when they have to deal with this stuff. But if it's in-house and it's one thing, it's so much easier if you can just do it yourself. And the other thing too is eventually the reason I still want a printer is I want it so, like, if there's an emergency, we solve it. You know what I mean? Like, like we don't need to be like Comics Wellsprings. They're great. But like, let's say, I'm waiting for a comic to get printed. I got a show I'm going to next week. It's now Tuesday, or it's now like Friday of this week. And I'm like, hey, you guys gonna make it in time? Like, we're really trying. It's like, when that happens, I want to be able to go, hey, you come over here. It costs a little more, but we'll get it to you and guarantee.
Our fall show that we did last year, November, the comics just got here like the day before. The day before. And it was only half of the order, and I was like, hey, and I went to go like message them on Instagram. And I like sent a voice message instead of like texting because I was like pretty upset, and I don't get upset. So so I was like about to send this like voice message like you fucked up, and then like I look at the emails like oh okay,
Yeah,
the other half is coming tomorrow, so I'll just delete this before I send it.
Yeah, and then it came before the event. So that was good.
Yeah. And I was like,
Oh, that's what it was. Oh, yeah, the first one came 2 days before the event. The other one came the day before the event. That's what it was. So it was pretty crazy, but like that's kind of the thing is like it'd be nice to be able to have that stuff like
This is one of my favorite things. This is actually our portfolio for the studio. A bunch of stuff that we've done, comics that we've worked on, the different services that we do, logo designs.
You should mail that to us.
Campaign designs. If you guys want one, I can send one to you.
I would love one.
This is available digitally on our website, but I figured one of the best ways to prove that we know how to make comics is to make our portfolio a comic. And this is completely printed in-house. David printed these, and we did all the design work, all the production for it, and it just showcases all the different stuff that we do. This one was really cool because we did logo design and lettering for the same book in 2 different languages.
Awesome.
So
yeah, that's super cool. Like, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I would love if you could mail me specifically a physical one because I work in the music industry as well, and we get artists all the time, and I'll end up telling them like, oh, I have a comic book publishing company that we make our own comics. I know a bunch of artists. I can kind of hook them up. But like beginning to end, we don't have that set up yet. So I would love to be able to go, here's somebody and the artwork they can produce. Which one do you like? Order.
Yeah.
I'll get a 93, please. So like that's kind of the idea.
Send me your address after this, and I'll send a few of them your way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, not a problem. And then we're currently working on revamping our website. I've been working on adjusting the website and building it up over time, but what we're doing, I want to offer something truly unique in the industry. So we actually have a 3-tier process for hiring us. Basically, we have individual services, or a 3-step process, where for super simple stuff, like say you have a book that you want to get lettered, or you have a logo that you need, or you need some editing done. Right now, you can go to our website, metalninjastudios.com. You can find lettering, and coincidentally, for the next couple days, we have a 30% off sale on lettering. But you can go to the website. You can say, I need 24 pages of lettering, and you can buy it directly on our website. And then our team will reach out. We will provide you a link to upload all your assets. We'll get everything lettered, done, back, super simple, quick, neat. That's not enough for you. You need lettering and logo design. You need some sort of bundle. What I'm building right now is a self-quoting questionnaire to where basically you can go through and select the different services that you like, and it will ask you questions based off of the options that you select into what services you need, because every comic needs something a little bit different. And based off of what answers you select on that questionnaire, it'll kick the answers over to me and my team. We can then present a quote directly based off of what you need. And then if that still doesn't answer all of your questions, you can reach out for a free consultation, whereas we can talk everything through and provide a quote based off of that.
But we're definitely going to have to chat more after this call, because I've actually thought of that exact same questionnaire. Like Greg knows. I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, but like some of that stuff is just, like I said, it's outside our wheelhouse at the moment. I would love potentially to do some partnership where, like I said, like I get in contact with people who want comics all the time, and I know that we just don't have the capacity to handle the creation of them at the moment. But yeah, maybe we could set up some referral affiliate thing with you guys and be like partners and be like, yeah, I'll send you guys. I'll get stuff your way.
A referral program is actually something that's been on my to-do list for quite a while. So let's definitely talk.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But like that, it's such a cool idea because that's the whole thing. Is that we're in the publishing space, not the production space. Eventually, I would like to get there, and one day we can be friendly competitors. But it's one of those things where I definitely think that in order to really grow a successful company, you should do what you're good at first. Like Amazon sold books, and then they sold books, and then they sold more books, and then they kept selling books, and then they're like, what about books and notebooks, right? And then they added something one thing at a time, and then they became the everything store, right? Like that's kind of the idea, and I see that, it's much better to do it that way. You'll even if you, because like Amazon was known as the bookstore, online bookstore, and now they're known as the everything store. People think that you get stuck in some bucket if you just do that one thing, but honestly, if you get really good at that one thing, eventually you create systems like you're talking about, getting these questionnaires. Someone comes through, they answer a couple of questions, which, by the way, I could even help you with that. I can tell you that you could probably get that to be automatic quoting too, so that you don't even have to look at it. You could probably get good estimates on that. I could, that's something that's the part that I thought about, was how to build out spreadsheets that the questionnaire would pull from and be like, oh, here's these answers, that's your number. Like, here's the range, stuff like that.
I'm in my previous life, I was an accountant, so spreadsheets are they're kind of my forte, and there's already so many calculations and everything going into our quoting process.
Have you heard of ChatGPT?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've already created like quote machines for other clients that I've worked with, because I figured out how to get ChatGPT to build out calculators for like a bunch of stuff. I have like a whole web page on my personal website called, what is it? Like life calculators, and it's like various calculators for different parts of your life, whether it's like financial, health, things like that. And I'm like slowly building them all out. But yeah, you could do so much stuff, and yeah.
I feel like we're gonna have a fun conversation later.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to. But everyone else gets to just enjoy the bromance for now.
I was gonna say something. The birth of Metal Ninja Studios was really based off of the fact that everything that I notice in the industry is people are afraid to talk shop. I mean, I can't even mention how many conventions I went to try and talk to other letterers where people didn't want to talk because they viewed me as competition. So, which, I mean, technically it's true, but when you have that mindset of the limited mindset, it really holds the entire industry back.
Do you know one thing I like to think about, and the reason why I think that independent comic books are like it's struggling to like take hold is that mindset there, where like people are so competitive. It's the same reason why hip hop has like this hard barrier to break into. Like that's why it's like there's a select few number of stars in hip hop, and the rest are like stuck down here at this like intermediate stage or lower, because they're always thinking everyone's competition.
Yep.
But they don't even realize that some of the biggest ones grew by doing like features. Like that was the whole point, was they were collaborative. And why do you think country music is so huge? It's because here in Nashville, for example, all of the songwriters in Nashville are very collaborative. What are they out in LA? They're like, no, I want my 1%. No, I want my 15%. They need numbers. Here they're like, there's 4 of us in a room. We each get 25%, I guess. Like they don't care at all. And I think that, like, think about this for lettering. Like, sure, you might be able to take that guy's comic book client, or that small business down the street who wants a new piece of marketing material, never considered a small micro comic. Wow, now that's not even a comic book. But it became one because we made it so. For me, I figured that out in the music space. I'm like, that's interesting. Almost every major hip hop artist that is like that has a Grammy said comic book saved their life. That's weird. And then I go to the New York Comic Con 2018, and there's an entire panel about musicians make comics. There's a whole untapped industry of musicians who I've already brought it up to tons of hip hop artists, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to be in a comic," and it's like, cool. Like now I just need the logistics of getting that done. It's crazy.
We definitely need to talk, because if you look at our website, we have 3 primary target audiences. We have the comic book fan, which it's basically everyone that we think of when we talk. The conversation so far. We have publishers, because we also streamlined the end of process production workflow for publishers. I used my history with Scout and working with several different publishers to streamline the workflow there. And then what I call industry explorers. And those are people that are successful in their own right outside of comics, whether they're CEOs, whether they're business people, musicians, YouTubers, people that already have time and resources from a successful career outside of comics, but they have a story to tell. They don't necessarily want to learn how to make comics. They just want to make a comic. So that's where we come in. And
it's funny that's what I mentioned earlier, making it easier for independent. It's like that's literally what your business is built on. It's like,
yeah,
it's such a good idea.
I had to try and not chuckle while you were talking because
I'm like, man, I really wish there was this company called like Metal Ninja Studios and it just handled everything. Like I could just go there and they just make comics for you, print them. You know?
pretty much. Like I might know a guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the studio was actually built to combat that that restrictive mindset because honestly, I wanted to talk shop, and it got to the point where I had too much work myself, and I realized that I was the limiting factor. Because while I'm a pretty good letterer, I can only work so fast and I can only do so much. So I specifically went out and I hired people to help balance my own workload, and I hired people that were better than me because those people are going to have their strengths. Like Christian Dokolomansky, our senior designer, dude is a beast in everything that comes to lettering and design. Like he is amazing. Blake Morgan is our operations manager, and the dude is fantastic when it comes to talking to people. And he's awesome when it comes to managing projects. So between the two of them being able to manage their specialties, I'm able to focus on my own stuff, which allows everything to grow. And what I've noticed in the years since we've expanded the studio from a one-person show to the full-service studio that we are today is by taking different people in an industry where everyone tends to be more closed-minded and really restrictive. By actively combating that and trying to expand, we actually just a couple of weeks ago relaunched the Forge of Ren, which is our educational blog. We give out free educational material on how to make comics. This month, we're focusing on lettering. We have sections in there in how to hire a letterer, questions you need to ask. What are some things, I don't think it's up yet, but one that I'm going to be posting, I think next week, is 10 common pitfalls that amateur letterers fall into. That one is kind of dual purpose. It tells the writer what to look for when they're looking for an amateur letterer, and it tells the amateur letterer, these are some things to improve on if you want to improve. But we're giving all that information away for free because while the industry tends to keep itself closed, the only way that the studio is going to succeed is by helping the industry succeed. The only way the industry is going to succeed is by, quite frankly, getting over itself and expanding. And the only way
rising tides raise all ships. Yeah.
Exactly. And the only way that you can expand is to realize that we're all in this industry together. The only way to save an industry that for years everyone's talking about how comics are dying. Comics aren't really dying. It's people are afraid to let comics expand. And
yeah, they're actually at an all-time high in sales. I think that they're actually at a peak of what they've ever sold like in the past couple of years. So like it's definitely not dying. And you know, even if it was, there's more and more people being born every day. So even if only a percentage of them, you know, likes comics, you're still getting more people that are going to read comics later. Like one of the big things Greg and I talked about doing is kind of like music, actually. Like in order to really build a fan base in any entertainment, you kind of need to get the kids. And so what we want to do is our biggest selling comic happens to be our kid-friendly comic. Didn't even think that was going to be the case. And so what our goal would be is to get types of comics like that, like into schools, into libraries, things like that. And so, yeah, there's so many ways that it can expand, and you get a kid reading comics. And that actually the other big one too. We've talked to a couple of school teachers about this. Because of the COVID lockdown, there's a lot of kids that are struggling to read. A lot of kids learn to communicate, and when you're blocking your mouth, it's kind of hard to read lips. And so they struggle with communication, and because of that, as a byproduct, they also struggle with reading. And so, yeah, there's like, and one of the best ways to learn a foreign language is through comic books. That's another big thing Greg and I want to do, is translate all of our comics into foreign languages. And I think that would be incredible to be able to offer that, globally. That's another thing too we want to get to, is we want to have printers in every country on Earth. Like, that would be incredible. If we had at least a couple printers in Europe, we have printers in Canada, just because it's so stupid. You could print on the border of Canada, and once across the Canadian border, it's like, oh, there's $20. It's like crazy how much they charge. So the whole idea would be, if we could sell and then print right on site, it's like, that would be incredible to do that connector. But like I said, same with production. Like, if you're producing it and then you have the physical copies there, like, it'd be awesome if we could have another producer, but like in Europe, and another producer in like South America. And it'd be like incredible to have like this network of comic book companies that are trying to make the industry grow. Yeah, not just, ourselves grow. And that was how our whole company started, was we realized, hey, most comics, I think it was, we found a video that the largest seller of horror comics in the United Kingdom was in his 40s, living in his mom's basement, $10,000, $40,000 a day. And the reason why was, after all of the expenses to get the comic book created, you then go further into debt through the printing process. And so you basically go red, and then you have to go red again, and you have to go, and if you want to potentially make the money back, you actually have to go more red, because you have to print in larger bulk. So it's one of these crazy things where, like, you have to figure out what this happy medium is. So we're like, what if we just started digitally, and then eventually we can sell the comics as, in the future, after we build a fan base? That was like the whole thing. And then we realized, oh, wow, there's a ton of independent comic creators out there. So we had no idea. We weren't in the comic book space. We entered it, and then we're like, wow, there's a whole universe of people that want to create comics. And so we ended up creating what we just called the platform, which is our website. And we used to host, 100 plus, 200 plus comics on our site from independent creators all around the world, South America, Europe, all over the US, Canada. And it was one of those things where that is like still a dream to like build that stuff out, but it's like having the systems to be able to support that, having like people like yourself that can help, take some of these creators who are like, I got an idea. It's like, hey, we don't got time for an idea. We got this and this going, but like, I'd love to be able to, redirect people and get more comics created. And actually, I was just thinking about that too. We're gonna have to get you to like guest blog on our blog, like have something written up for people to you about lettering. I love that. Love that idea about really diving deep into one subject. Is very cool.
Yeah, I'd love to. And the blog itself on our side, like I said, the Forge of Ren.
Who is Ren?
Ren is our mascot.
I saw the it's the link. It says, "Who is Ren?" on the blog.
Yep. He's our mascot, and his name stands for resilience, empathy, and nobility. It kind of leads into the cyborg aspect of the Metal Ninja. So there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into the symbolism for the studio. But the Forge of Ren, the reason why we called the educational blog that is because it's all about forging the next generation of comic creators. So while this month we're focusing on lettering, next month we're going to be focusing on a different aspect of the industry, whether it's comics or overall resilience. I'm an endurance athlete outside of comics, so I take a lot of the lessons that I've done through the athletics and I bring them into business and comics. So a lot of those different philosophies will all kind of tie in together. So some of the blog posts may not necessarily tie into this particular element of comics, but it'll be like how self-improvement can improve your writing and different things along.
Greg, do you hear that? That's so funny. Like, yeah, you're like the second or third person I know in the comic space who is doing good and fit. So it's definitely it's very correlational, so far. But it's that idea, like being resilient in body and mind is good for the comic space, which is a very defeating place.
Yeah. I mean, my darkest times in the industry were when I
At
was
night.
the least fit. Yes, you got it. Luckily, I have lights, so. But no, my lowest points in the industry were also my darkest psychological points, which were when I was my least fit, which unfortunately wasn't that long ago. But over the past few years, I've increased my physical fitness, got back into doing obstacle course racing, which is my main event, and uh, 2023, I founded the Metal Ninja Charity Challenge, which is an annual event that, like I said, started in 2023, where I pick one crazy fitness event and I do that and leverage the studio to raise money for charity. So in 2023, I did what was called the 4x4x48, where I ran 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And we raised $1,000 for intracranial hypertension research, which is a neurological disorder that my wife has.
Does that cause migraines? Is that what that is?
Yeah, basically it's a buildup of cerebral spinal fluid in the base of the skull, and if left unchecked, it leads to buildup of pressure that causes migraines and even more severe chronic pain. It is manageable, non-curable, but manageable. And they're trying to do a lot more research into it because it's extremely rare. So the sample size for their studies are very small.
Awesome. Have you done other events? Like, so is that event like you put that on, like it's your event?
So basically what I do is I find events that are pre-existing.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. Like, do you know about the Spartan races and the Tough Mudders and those types of things?
Yeah, so funny thing, that flag is Spartan race.
That's why I was.
all of those medals are from different obstacle course races. You can't see, but
you should auction off the medals to raise money.
No.
He's like, no, those belong to me.
Outside of this office are my Savage Race medals, because Savage Race is what got me into all of this.
Oh, Savage is another. I forgot about that one.
I was a very unfit person for the vast majority of my life until about 2017 when I was introduced to Savage Race, and that changed everything for me.
Unfit to Savage. That's a good book title.
I like it. Those two bibs that you see, the one
Slav to Savage. Maybe that one. I'm trying to think of a good alliteration.
That 50 and the one next to it.
Yeah.
Those are actually from the 2024 charity challenge, which that's the only book that I currently promote right now, because what we did for the 2024 charity challenge, it was actually in November, and the book is still available for pre-order. It's called Beyond the Challenge, and we actually
do you do the challenge every November?
No, we do it once a year. The one for 2025 is going to be in September.
Okay, cool. Because I'd like to support that. That's cool. I'd like maybe SeerNova Comic can support it too. I like that idea though. That's a cool.
Well, if you want to support the comic, you still can and help promote it, share it out. MetalNinjaStudios.com/charity. Basically, what we did is I ran an event called World's Toughest Mudder, which you mentioned, Tough Mudder. World's Toughest is the world championship of Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
And it's a 24-hour race. You go as many miles as you can in 24 hours. What I did was I said for every 2 miles that I complete, we're going to add a page to a comic, and we're going to make that comic. And my goal was 50 miles. As you can see from the bib behind me, I hit my goal. So we're currently making a 25-page comic, and we're raising money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
That's awesome.
So far, we've raised close to $2,000, and we are keeping pre-orders for the comic open all throughout the production phase until we go to print. When we go to print, we are going to stop sales, and the physical copy will no longer be available. So it's only going to be available while we're making the book. And people who pledge to donate a certain amount of money will get access to a closed Facebook group where they get weekly updates on the production of the book.
So I like that idea. That's such a cool idea.
Watch the book get made.
That's a very cool idea. I'll be honest, like if anybody's listening to that and they have a Kickstarter, that's a great idea even for like a Kickstarter, is to like have a closed community where you're sharing secrets in it. It's like, hey, if you back the Kickstarter, you get early access to see what's going on behind the scenes. I love that idea. That's cool. Man, well, it's been awesome. We definitely, first off, I learned a lot because I haven't met you before today. But yeah, this has been a very cool conversation. We definitely have to talk some more. But yeah, I think we covered enough today to inspire some people, get people learning about yourself and about the comic book industry. So yeah, if people want to find you, where's like, if you could only send them to one place, we could share a couple in a second, but if there's one place you want them to go, you're like, this is like, do this, what is it?
MetalNinjaStudios.com/links. That'll give you everything.
Nice. So yeah, that's easy. That's what people need to do. And if you want people to, engage with you, do you prefer email, Instagram, Facebook? Where do you want people to start chatting with you?
The best way to get a hold of me personally would be email. That's joelrodriguez@metalninjastudios.com. Otherwise, I'm probably the most active on Facebook.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for coming. That was Greg, what episode are we on? 7? Yeah, season 2, episode 7 of SeerNova Comics Podcast. There we go.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It was a blast.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
See ya.